Turd Tips by Turd Nugent. What's up, Turdlings? Today we're going to be going over some advanced tips and tricks to help you become one of the top players on your server. All of the tips I'm going to be covering in this video you can start doing as early as Season 0. Now this video is going to be a bit of a long one as there's a lot of details to cover in each of the tips that we're talking about. It is an advanced tips video after all. I'll be leaving timestamps in the description so that you can easily navigate this video and revisit tips later on, share them with people, etc. Though I do recommend watching this video at least up to the first tip before you jump around, because there is some information that is important to know before you skip ahead. After the first week on this server, I was roughly rank 300 for combat power. Today, we're nearing the end of Season 0, and I'm in the top 20 at the moment. Now, combat power is not exactly the best reference for a player's actual power level, as combat power can be manipulated through things like leveling up all of your low heroes. Explore is actually a much better reference to a player's actual power level. This does only take into account the power level of their heroes and not their troops, but it's a much more accurate representation than combat power is. Two reasons why I'm showing you my ranking in a advanced tips and tricks video. The first being that if I can climb the ranks from rank 300 to rank 7 using these techniques, then you can as well. The second reason is tip number 1. Join a good alliance. A good alliance is absolutely critical in this game. There are so many reasons why you need to be in a good alliance, and not just a good alliance, but the best alliance you can possibly be in. Now, being in a good alliance may not sound like an advanced tip, but many of the tips I'm about to share with you do require you to be in a strong alliance. The other requirement for getting ahead in this game is planning for the future. If you're only thinking about what you need to do right now, you're going to be missing out on a lot of opportunity for rewards, and you're going to be making mistakes that you could have avoided with adequate planning. Now for the real tip number 1. Focus on your primary lineup. Your primary lineup is going to carry you through the early game. It's very tempting to work on your second and third lineup. However, there's really only two things that a second and third lineup are used for. One of them is Champion Duel. And if you're not in the top ranks of Champion Duel, you're not going to be getting very great rewards from it. A little bit of recruitment points once a week, and that's about it. The other is Summit Arena, which doesn't unlock until you start to near the end of Season 0. So before then, there's really not much reason to have a second lineup. And if you're focused on a second or even third lineup, you're going to be taking away from your primary lineup, as you'll be focusing on gear. You'll be spending your memento coins and your medals distributed among 10 or 15 heroes, as opposed to just focusing on your best 5. By focusing on your best 5, you will advance much further in many aspects of the game, including Explore, Expedition, Arena, Mutated, getting level 10 Boxic Mines earlier, winning battles against other players. There's so many benefits to focusing on your first lineup. And just Explore alone, the further you can get in Explore, the more memento coins you get every day and during hours of the day, which will eventually fuel your second and third lineup. Tip number 2, try not to change your lineup too frequently. but only when you need to really improve it. The first reason is once your heroes exceed level 30, it costs diamonds to reset their level. That may not be a big deal to some players, but the bigger deal is your hero medals. As you can see, I have some heroes I no longer use who I invested hero medals into. Hero medals are not all that easy to acquire, so when you're abandoning heroes that you've already invested in, it can set you back. Jesse, the hero I just showed you, has become significantly outranked by my other heroes due to luck of the draw with getting shards for the heroes. So this was a choice that I had to make, and it was the wise choice. However, you want to avoid doing it too frequently so you're not wasting resources on heroes you no longer use. Tip number 3 has to do with Solari heroes. And yes, if you're a free player, this tip will work for you as well. Now, there are many tips I can share with you about Solari heroes, but today we will be focusing on one concept in particular. To begin this topic, let's talk about Wallowitz. Wallowitz is a very high intelligence hero that you get for free. Wallowitz will typically be stationed at the control center because of his abilities. However, because he has intelligence, not only does he increase your construction speed while he's working at the control center, but you can also move him to the laboratory, which also requires intelligence to speed up your research. Now, Wallowitz does not have to stay at the laboratory while you're doing research. He only has to be there when you initially start the research. The same is true for when you initially start construction. He only has to be at the control center when you start that construction. It is best to leave Wallowitz in the control center due to his abilities, but it is not a problem to move him to the research laboratory to initiate a research. Because of this, it makes Luke a pretty ineffective hero unless you plan on purchasing him multiple times to unlock his third ability. If you do purchase Luke, you will then be dividing your resources between two heroes who could effectively be doing the same job, and that includes both memento coins and hero medals. There are two ways that we can improve Wallowitz's intelligence to give us even more construction and research speed. The first is merely by leveling him up. The second is by equipping him with intelligence gear. We even have the option to rank up that intelligence gear as well. Now, gear does not do nearly as much for a hero's attributes as leveling them up do, so I would focus primarily on leveling them up. But if you have some scrap gear kicking around that will give him some intelligence, go ahead and put it on him. I happen to have some scrap gear that I don't want to spend the diamonds to reset, so he's the best hero for me to put it on. Additionally, if you want to go even further with this concept, you can take your best intelligence gear off of your combat heroes, put it on Wallowitz, start your research or your construction, and then re-equip your combat heroes. This can get quite tedious if you're doing it frequently. However, if you have something like a 12-day long construction, or it's Alliance Duel construction day and you're planning on burning 300 hours of construction speed ups, you better be equipping your best intelligence equipment to Wallowitz. Now that we have an understanding of how this concept works, let's take a look at where else we can apply it. The next place we can apply it is at our troop training facilities. The gym does not require Lori or any other hero to stay here at all times. You only need that hero in that facility when you initiate training. And as soon as you initiate training, you can remove that hero. Now, the troop training facilities all require vitality in order to increase troop training speed. So, where else can we best utilize our vitality heroes is the mint. The mint also requires vitality in order to increase the mint output of Z coin. So while you're not training troops, you can have your troop training heroes working in the mint to give you more of the most scarce resource that you can produce. If you haven't purchased the troop training heroes, this concept works excellent for you as well, as the next highest vitality hero would be Kara. So you can merely take Kara out of the pumpkin farm or wherever you have her working, bounce her between the troop training facilities to get your batches of troops going, and then put her back from wherever you took her out of. The last place we can utilize this concept is at the infirmary. The infirmary requires luck to increase medicine output. So you can move your best luck hero into this facility, start your batches of medicine, and then move your luck hero elsewhere. Now, there's not that many great places to move your luck heroes to. Most of them will be your farms or your mines. So, with Helen, I generally tend to leave her in the infirmary, especially with her ability as she auto produces medicine. But if you don't have Helen, then you may want to be moving a hero in and out of the infirmary. The hero that you get for free that has the highest luck would be Diana. Tip number 4 has to do with our 3 primary resources: Zcoin, stone, and iron, and how we acquire these resources. Since Zcoin is quite scarce, especially as you progress in the game, and there are not many places to acquire it outside of the mint, I typically have my gathering heroes mining Zcoin, with the exception of Alliance Duel Day for gathering, as gathering iron gets us the most Duel Day points per hour. Because our trucks have a limited load capacity, when we go to attack other players, it is typically best to find players or NPCs to attack who have Zcoin that you can take. However, early on in the game, you can only take a maximum of 5,000 Zcoin per week. So, being that we have a limited capacity, our next best resource to take is iron. Since you don't have a choice of what your troops take home for resources from your attacks, you'll need to be scouting to find enemies who have Zcoin and maybe iron, but minimal stone, so you can maximize the effectiveness of the capacity of your trucks when you're deploying attacks. Now, the reason we don't want to be carrying stone home in our trucks from our attacks is because every other source of acquiring it that we have, we get 1.5 times the amount of stone per hour than we do iron. So it's much more effective to bring home iron with that limited capacity in your trucks. So if we're not gathering stone, and we're trying to avoid bringing stone home in our trucks, then where are we going to get our source of stone from? One place you can acquire some extra stone from is in the quarries within your fortress. If you have spare Solari heroes kicking around, rather than putting them in the iron mines, you can put them in the stone mines. Likely with the coal mine, you don't really need a hero there, especially if your helicopter is level 12. You can get all the coal you need from the helicopter from the stone you produce. So you might as well put your heroes in your stone quarries within your facility. At these quarries, you also produce 1.5 times the amount of stone that you would iron, so it's worth it. Now, these stone quarries are not going to give you all the stone you need, of course, but you will also be bringing home some stone from your attacks. You're probably not going to find a whole bunch of sources of iron and Zcoin with no stone as you deploy attacks on other players or NPCs around the world, so you'll likely be bringing home plenty of stone. In addition, if you go sending your trucks out to gather, you might be able to send a truck here or there to a stone quarry and take advantage of that increased gathering speed at the stone quarries to get yourself what you need. Tip number 5 has to do with gambling on champion duels. Now, I know everybody listening wants me to give them some tip or trick to make as many diamonds as possible as you can off of champion duels because it's awful tempting. And there are some ways to give yourself a little bit of an advantage, such as if somebody in your alliance is in the duel, you can watch to see if they're online. You can talk to them, help them check out how the duel is going, if they have a chance of winning it, if they can change up their lineup. However, the way the duel gambling is structured, on the average, it is not worth gambling. Even when it feels like a sure thing, one loss can lose you more coins than you might earn in a month of gambling and winning. I've lost twice, and it was more each time than I have earned since 2 months being on this server. That specifically is because of the way the odds are structured, where when you win, gambling on somebody who has the odds in their favor, you don't earn all that much, especially if the odds are heavily in their favor. This is a pretty balanced duel, but let's take a look at a more imbalanced duel. Let's take a look at the finals here. So we have a 12 million CP versus a 10 million CP. Right now, if you bet on the guy who's most likely to win, you bet 1,000 diamonds, you win 30 if he wins. But if you lose 1,000. And what are the odds that this guy's going to win? It's very possible. It all depends on who's online and who's smart at rearranging their lineups to beat the other person. But on the average, if you gamble long enough, you will lose your diamonds. Tip number 6 has to do with personal armaments race. Personal armaments race has the same schedule every week. So if you memorize that schedule or even save a photo of it to your phone, bookmark a website that has the schedule on it, anything like that, and you check that schedule regularly, you can plan for the future to plan your other activities in the game to maximize your points in the personal armaments race. The easiest way to do this is by doing your mutated, your Kaya, and your ferocious zombies at the time of day that the personal armaments race gives you rewards from killing mutated Kaya and ferocious. The Last Fortress Underground fandom page is one of the places where we can find this schedule at. Weekdays have 4 events each day, and they're sort of shuffled for different days of the week. Weekends, every event is kill enemies. Weekend events do have different rewards for the kill enemies. As you can see highlighted here, the ones in yellow give momentum coins, and the ones in gray give gear. And not just gear, they also give discount coupons for if you plan on spending money and other very powerful gear related items. I highly recommend just skipping out on the memento coins on the weekends and going for those gear time slots. During weekdays, there are specific things we can do to maximize our rewards based off of this schedule. One of the things we can do for gathering events is to get our gathering going in advance of it so it finishes at the start of the gathering event. Then we can deploy gathering again and recall before that gathering event finishes. This is pretty likely to get us either the second or third tier chest. Additionally, if you're at the point in the game where you can take Boxic Mines, if you time them to end during this gathering event, they count. A single 10 Boxic Mine will give you tier 3 rewards without any other gathering. There is another advanced technique that we can utilize to maximize our rewards from Personal Armaments Race. However, first, we need to learn tip number 7. Tip number 7 is to become friends with somebody from an active alliance outside of your own, preferably an allied alliance. There are a lot of benefits to having a close relationship with somebody outside of your alliance. I work closely with somebody from this Red Alliance who happens to be our sibling alliance. And together, that player and I can do a lot of things that I can't do with players in my own alliance, such as testing combat techniques, doing tent wars on Saturdays for Alliance Duel, and doing destructive mining for each other. Destructive mining is very valuable when done right. Destructive mining is where one player attacks another player's bauxite mine. You can do destructive mining 4 times on a single mine. Each attack reduces the timer by 10% of the total time. So on a level 10 mine, 12-hour duration total, 10% of that would be 1 hour and 12 minutes per attack. You do lose some resources when your mine is attacked, 20% on the first hit and 10% for each consecutive hit. However, if both players are attacking each other's mines, both players are bringing home resources. So you're still getting the 100% resources in 60% of the time. This is not the technique that I am encouraging today, as level 10 bauxite mines are typically already scarce in large alliances. Our alliance has a real struggle already to have enough level 10s for everybody. So we have actually banned this farming technique. However, what you can do with destructive mining and a partner is timing these mines to finish during the personal armaments race. If you plan in advance to know how much destructive mining you need, knowing that 1 hour and 12 minutes comes off that timer with every hit, you and your partner can work together to make it so you always finish the bauxite mine during the personal armaments race gathering event. And you never go without a bauxite mine. Without a partner, if you want to finish that armaments race, you're going to be waiting hours and hours before you take your mine so that you can get it to finish on time. Not only are you going to be missing out on Alliance Shop currency from owning it, but your alliance is also going to be missing out on aluminum, which fuels a lot of alliance activities. Tip number 9 has to do with alliance duels, specifically the Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday events. Tuesday is construction day, Wednesday is research day, and Friday is troop training day. In alliance duels, we can use alliance duel points cards to increase the amount of points we gain. The cards only last for about an hour, and most players are going to be popping these cards at 0:30 server time so they can get their construction, research, or troop training done as soon as possible. However, on all 3 of those days, there is a much better time to use this card and do your speed ups. If we look back at the personal armaments race schedule, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, gathering is at the same time on all 3 of those days. We've already established how we can get max rewards pretty easily for that gathering event. So we're going to be using speed ups on all 3 of these days, and you can use speed ups in any personal armaments race event to progress towards the rewards. For Alliance Duel, we're going to be using a lot of speed ups on these days, and we can actually use enough speed ups to get 2 of these rewards, but we only have an hour for our double points card. So when do we use that double points card? How about 17:30 to 18:30 server time? Then we can split our speed ups between 2 personal armaments races each day. Since gathering is 06 to 12 and we're already completing that, we'll be using these double points cards at the same time on each of these days. Additionally, the ones highlighted in yellow here are mutated, which give memento coins, which are pretty great rewards, but not as good as what we get from Zombies or Trade Center. Both of these events give us hero medals, and hero medals are much more rare to acquire than memento coins. So 2 out of those 3 days, we're getting double hero medal rewards for something that we would have been spending on a single memento coin reward. The 9th and final tip is possibly the most powerful tip on the list if you're progressing towards the end of Season 0. In the research facility, under war preparations, faction enhancement, this category of research is extremely powerful. A friend and I learned that I noticed when I battled him in the arena that he had a higher CP than me for his lineup, but his heroes were significantly lower level, on average around 8 levels lower than my heroes. I asked him to send me a link to his lineup so I could analyze it to see why he had such greater CP than me. And what I found was his heroes also had lower equipment levels. He had less epic equipment, and his average upgrade level for his skills was lower than mine. So all of his heroes on average were lower than mine in every possible category of how they could be stronger and how he could have more CP than I. The only difference that we could find in our builds was that faction research. Now, this faction research is a little bit tough to get to before the end of season 1, but it is achievable. And even though they don't look it, they are a bit expensive. That Z-coin cost doesn't look very much, but if you do the cost to time ratio, they are more expensive than the majority of researches you've been doing up to this point. But they are very worth it, as they will make your heroes much, much more powerful. This concludes our advanced tips for new players guide. If you stuck around this long, I commend you, as this was a long one. If you have questions about what was covered in this video or have recommendations for other videos you would like to see on this channel, please leave them in the comments section below. If you found this video helpful, please be sure to like and subscribe. To all you turdlings out there, thank you for watching, and stay solid.